Over the past 40 years, Garry Browne has helped launch international brands into Australia like Mentos, Chupa Chups and Fisherman's Friend, to name a few. And now he's helping people brand themselves in their personal and business life with his new book, Brand New, Brand You. Garry, before we get into your book, coronavirus has been such an interesting and challenging time for brands. Which brands have you seen do a really good job at responding to this crisis?
I think brands that have stuck to their purpose in terms of what they deliver to their customer or consumer. Uh, One that comes to mind very clearly is Bunnings. Bunnings is certainly played to those who are stuck at home and want to do some sort of handiwork. And if you're locked down, the only thing you can do is do something at home. And if you also go to Rebel is another sports is another good example of where a brand such as that have been able to promote um, in-home cycling, sport, etc., to keep people fit and mentally alert.
Some brands have definitely benefited from the terrible situation, but what about those brands that haven't, like, say, Corona Beer? Quite an unfortunate brand name. I doubt they're ever going to change it, but how do they now recover from coronavirus as a brand?
Well, it's an interesting question because when it first came out that Corona virus, Corona Beer, Um, I wonder whether that was more people's concern rather than the consumer concern. I do think that, again, sticking to your purpose and your values, the brand itself was certainly promoting heavily, possibly to try and maintain its awareness and presence. I think those who really recognise the brand for what it is probably wouldn't see it damaged in the way that you possibly suggest. I think, from what I've heard, the volume sales of Corona are certainly haven't been damaged.
Oh, that's good. And I think when it all started, we saw people actually going out and buying it as a bit of a joke, and we saw all these memes. So you're saying as long as they stick to their values, that they should be able to ride the storm and get through.
Stick to their purpose, maintain their values, and ensure that they can deliver to their consumer or their customer.
I also feel like coronavirus has spurred a lot of patriotism for Australia. You know, we're closed off from other countries, and we're proud of our country and proud of how we're going. Is this a big opportunity for brands to put themselves forward, those domestic products particularly?
I think there's a real opportunity there to actually develop the local content, the local brand. I do think that consumers have to also buy into the fact that we do have an isolation as a country, which is a strength and also a weakness at times. But I think it's ensuring that the brand that develops locally emphasises this isolation as a positive aspect, because it allows us to be self-sufficient in so many ways that will allow us to develop and continue to go down the path that you are proposing.
Now, looking to people also during the coronavirus pandemic, we've had our leaders Gladys Berejiklian, Daniel Andrews and Anastasia Palaszczuk. How do you think their personal branding has fared during the pandemic?
Christy, that's a really interesting question. And I do think that the electorate looks at or measures a brand of a politician based on the environment and circumstances in which they're performing. And the one thing with COVID is that nothing has remained the same. It has actually changed the dynamics of measurement, assessment. And so, in many ways, whatever you do is going to be new and different. And people will not have a benchmark by which they measure. In terms of the brands that you refer to, I tend to look at it in terms of leadership, because if those three politicians are leading in the right way, then they will find their brand is going to stand up. They've each had different issues, without going into the detail, that have impacted their brand. But the most important thing, I believe, is to go back to the leadership. What is their courage, their consistency, and their ability to be fair and engage and be relevant with their electorate? So I think that they've probably fared reasonably well in terms of the current environment, but it's how long they keep going in a manner that looks that they continue to deliver on their leadership. If they don't continue to demonstrate leadership and they try and hold on to a position, because at the moment COVID is continually is a movable feast. If they don't move with and maintain their relevance as a good leader, their brand will be damaged.
Now, onto your book, Brand New, Brand You. It couldn't have come at a better time, really, with lots of people experiencing a shift in their lives. What can people find in the book to help them discover their brand?
Well, in an environment where it's continually changing, what I've tried to demonstrate in the book is how important it is that you stick to your purpose. That is, what is your purpose? In a changing environment, you need to anchor many things, and one of them is purpose. Your values, you have to understand what your values are and what you stand for, because they will outlast the test of time. Your values are part of your brand, as is your purpose. But more importantly is a component of making sure you can actually harness that advantage is your relevance. And if you lose your relevance, then very simply you're out of touch and you can be isolated from your environment. So in a COVID environment, you have to continually think about your relevance and make it part of your questioning of yourself, to challenge all of those components that are going to allow you to adapt and maintain your relevance over time.
What people will be interested in buying this book? Who will it benefit?
The book will benefit anyone from 17 to 70, because through the journey of life, we all wish to maintain our relevance and ensure that we can have a fulfilling and satisfying life. And to do that, you've really got to ensure that you mean something to someone and people in general, and that's relevance. And I think that whether you are at left school and you are looking at trying to determine what your career would be, that's critically important to understand what your purpose and your values and who is you are going to be relevant to in terms of an employer. In terms of whether you're 70 or older, you want to be relevant to your grandchildren, to your friends. And so the techniques don't change. It's the dynamics do, but you have to use different ways in which you're going to engage with your grandchildren. And those sort of things are relevant to them, and you make them relevant to you as well. It is so critical that people really challenge themselves and ask themselves the questions that are going to be so important to articulate to others. And in an environment where it's so changeable and the world is going through so many different stages and motion of unknown, we ourselves have to keep our feet stable on the ground and ensure that we can be able to not only cope, but recognise and understand where we stand in the world and what we can add in terms of impact to making the world a better place.
Very well said. Thank you so much for your time, Garry.
Thank you, Christine.